What is going on? You are listening and, of course, watching Tags Live, aka Talk About Gay Sex, the live edition, where we are here every Wednesday night on the Crowdcast platform. This is episode 527. I am your host, Steve V, alongside partner in crime, Kodi Maurice Doggette. How the hell you doing, Kodi?
Hello, darling. I'm doing wonderful this evening. How are you, babes?
I'm doing really good, actually. It's our last show of 2023. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. It went by so fast, right? 2023 seemed like it was just
like
2
an
weeks
orgy,
ago,
right? Like we keep talking about orgies. It just seemed like we dipped our toe in the orgy.
in the orgy pool yesterday, and now
Damn it, it's over.
And now New Year's is here, darling.
It's a brand new year coming up, 2024. And in this episode, we have so much to talk to you about, including our interview live with Dale Corvino, who's going to be talking about his brand new short story fiction book, Bonds and Boundaries. And talk about salacious and sexy and hot stuff. We were talking to him offline a few minutes ago, and there's some juicy stuff. I can't wait to talk about this book. I was feverishly reading it. It's really good. It should be your winter read, your holiday read, but we will get into it in a little bit. And I know you were reading it as well, Kodi.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely going to read it by the fireplace when I go to Kansas. That's the perfect place for it, honestly. Comfy and cozy and reading this wonderful book.
Love it. Little thing, like Oprah does her favorite things at the end of the year or holiday thing. I don't know why I felt the need to, but this, I love essential oils, and I ordered this Rainbow Love. I don't know if you could see it, but it is by Art of the Root. You can follow them, Art of the Root. They do all these essential oils. I'm wearing it now, and it's really seductive, but they did one for the community, the LGBTQ community, Rainbow Love, and it's $8. And
Oh, cool.
it came right in my mailbox. I have been wearing it all holiday season because, I love to have a holiday moment, and it's been my fragrance of choice. I'm going to continue to wear it in the Bay Area when I leave tomorrow in Puerto Vallarta, and yeah, just thought I'd share that with you. Sorry, I'm not giving it away, but
underneath your seat is essential oils
in your virtual home. Okay, well, it is the year in review show. It's our last show of 2023, and we couldn't help but talk about so many things. Like, what, Kodi, were we talking about in early 2023? And it's kind of fun to go down memory lane in my mind, because it's wondering, are these topics still relevant? And let's just go down it. Well, in February of 2023, we were talking to Dr. Goldstein, episode 439, if you want to follow along. And we were talking to Dr. Goldstein, who's a proctologist. He's been on the show, a friend to the show, talking about our butt health. And recently, one of the things that he said as a bottom, or people that want to bottom, is, let me just go over some of the points. Eat a high fibrous diet if you can. Of course, we're going into Christmas and the holiday season, and so not always, I'm going to be eating sugar cookies and tamales. So not sure how high fibrous that's going to be, but I'm saving my bottoming for Puerto Vallarta. But yes, and I will be eating fiber during that period. You can take things. Dr. Goldstein has pure, his own pill that you can take that's very fibrous, and there's many out there that you can research and take on your own. One of the things, though, is the bulb that you use to clean yourself out. Most of us are over cleaning. It should only be going in this far. I'm using maybe 2 to 3 inches of my fingers right now. And you shouldn't over clean, because what you do is you start igniting more of, I'm being TMI, but what I'm just reiterating what the doctors are saying. You
Mhm.
don't want to reignite too much of that's not ready to come out, if you will, Cody.
Okay.
And yeah, and so most of us are over cleaning, and that over time can do damage to the rectal area, which you don't want to have done. And
Yeah.
so Dr. Goldstein has his own solution, and should check that out. I will put the link on, but he talks a lot more about our butt health and when to look at things, when to take things seriously, when to, if you want to bottom, start small with small silicone toys and things of that nature. So, will you be bottoming in 2024, Cody?
Me? I've been approached. I'm still thinking it over. I'm still taking applications and weighing my options and my investment portfolio to see how this is going to turn out. But I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see how this turns
I
out.
love it. Well, what this is my favorite of year in review, because in February of 2023, episode 442, one of the top headlines that we were talking about, Cody, was Jonathan Majors, who
Mm,
many of you know starred in things like, you were educating us on that episode of Lovecraft Country.
yep.
He's the Avengers. What else was he in, Cody? Because you did a good job of describing what he had been in so far.
Those were the two main things. Oh, he was in
Okay.
Creed. He was in Creed
Yeah.
with Michael B. Jordan as well. So
Okay, so
that
what
was
were we talking about Jonathan Majors back in episode 442 of February of this year? He was voted by Ebony Magazine Hollywood's Most Wanted. And he was getting a lot of flack at the time because the cover shoot that he did for Ebony had him with a pink boa, really tight blue jeans. He had his legs crossed. He had a pouty lip. And we were really living for the moment. And because a lot of Black Twitter was coming for him saying, look, this is where Black masculinity has gone, and he's leading the pack on all this kind of stuff and proliferating where Black masculinity has gone. Well, we are in the end of the year, and sadly, Jonathan Majors went from the hottest thing in Hollywood to losing and being fired by Disney, Marvel Studios after assault guilty verdicts. Actor, and it's so sad, Cody,
Mm,
because we just were talking about him being such a pioneer and going against what Black culture says is masculine. And you were such a fan of him. I've
yeah.
seen him a couple times in a couple films, and he was destined to be the next best thing. And here we are at the end of the year, and he's fired from all these major gigs. What do you say?
I say that it's a long way to fall because he went from someone that I looked at personally as like you said, a pioneer for expanding everyone's masculinity and redefining what it means to be a Black man, not only in this country but across the world. I feel like, and you could live your own truth the way that you wanted to being deemed an abuser by the court system. That is, it's a wild ride. And I don't know if I told you, but I actually saw him on the street the day that he was arrested.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
And
What
it
was his
was,
mood?
he was just trying to get to his next destination. I could tell that he was in a rush, and it was very early in the morning. And I just remember looking up and saying, "Oh my God, that's Jonathan Majors. He is looking fine." And then later on that day, I heard he had been arrested, or charges had been brought up against him as far as abuse has been concerned. And I can't believe it. My mind is blown that all this has transpired within a year. It really is a lot.
Yeah. Do me a favor, just pull your mic just a little closer to your mouth if you
Okay,
want.
darling.
Thank you.
Okay.
We are live though in front of a virtual studio audience, and we see one of our co-hosts in the mix, Teddy Alexis Rodriguez. Hello, Teddy. We see Doug. We see, I feel like Romper Room when they used to do the mirror thing. I don't know. That's an old reference, so I won't go further into that. But yeah, it is a sad state. What else were we to? But that one, talk about a full circle moment of 2023. We
I
were talking
know.
about George Santos and full circle moment as well.
Right?
Well, let's keep going on. What were we talking about in the early part of 2023 and how does it stand up? Well, David Geffen actually married a former porn star in 2023 amidst a whole slew of divorces. Well, Lucas Gage, who was one of our favorite actors, think White Lotus, and our hottie was engaged to Chris Appleton early in the year, only to 6 months later be divorced. And it was the year of the gay divorce when Ricky Martin divorced from his partner. Billy Porter is getting divorced as well, and a few others. How do you feel about the divorces? And what happened to you, Kodi, in this?
Wait a minute now. You left out my gay divorce.
Child, you weren't married.
I was
but
not married. I did not. We did
Thank
not put a
goodness,
ring
because you
on
wouldn't
it.
want to go through all that.
Oh my gosh, the paperwork alone. I could not even deal. It's been hard enough just breaking up as a relationship. So I can't fathom the heartbreak that these people have gone through. And it's my heart just really goes out to them and hope that they find love, and myself as well. I want to put myself in that place as well, where I just hope that I find love and everybody out there that's looking for love just finds it.
Well, you will find it
Thank
like all the
you.
others will. And we were also talking a lot about music this year. Kylie Minogue finally got her dues with a Vegas residency, and LGBTQ artists were at the top of their game. Think Kim Petras winning a Grammy for Best Pop Duo Group with Sam Smith. And Troye Sivan turned out to be the artist of the year in my mind with one of the best albums. And on the cover of his magazine, to much love, he was sniffing poppers with a guy on his shoulders. And that was iconic. I still listen to his album, Troye Sivan. And to me, he was one of the artists of the year, not just in LGBTQ land, but in general.
Yeah.
How do you weigh in on any of that music news?
Oh, I love all of those artists actually. Kylie is a personal favorite of mine. I listen to her all the time. Course, and Troye Sivan is a new favorite, and I'm so glad that he's nominated for a Grammy this year, and I hope that he wins.
Me too. And lastly, 2023, we went live in front of a studio audience, or at least a live audience, at the Vacaya Mexico Resort in Puerto Vallarta earlier this fall. And we just had a ball in
Oh
front.
yeah.
We had not done it together in front of a live audience. And did it give you the bug, Kodi?
I am dying to do more. I can't wait to get out there and host more live events with the studio audience. The energy was so palpable, and it just made me it gave me the bug. I'm ready. Did you get the bug? Are you ready for more?
I definitely got the bug. I'm ready for more live interactions like this and meeting some of our after we're going into our 7th year of Tags podcast, talk about gay sex. And so I would love to continue to work on a live venue like this. Other things that were launched was my OnlyFans recently
Oh.
and Sexy Poppy Stevie. And I know a lot of you are sick of hearing about it, but don't subscribe then. Don't
I'm
subscribe.
not. I'm your co-host, and I say promote that stuff, girl. Okay, we need to hear it.
Yes,
Tell everybody.
I finally, after listening to so many guests that we've had on the show, meeting Jet in Puerto Vallarta, meeting Susan Bratton, who's been on both of our shows, that I'm want to continue talking about gay sex, but I want to start showing my sex positivity of a certain age. Sexy Poppy Stevie is what it's called. And lastly, Kodi and I launched a brand new podcast in 2023, and it's called, we co created it, we co produced it. We're very proud of it. It's called Of a Certain Age, OACA, OACA. It's wherever you get your podcast. And it was a labor of love because it's
Definitely was.
very different from Tag's podcast, where it's based on hot topics and right now in the sex positive world. This one, we had a little bit more leeway to research and find what were we really wanting to interview? Who were we really wanting to interview of a certain age? And we have people in the realm of retreats, of the travel industry, of supplements, of yoga, of fashion, of are you where you thought you would be in your career, of where are we going to be at a certain point, physical fitness, on and on and on. And we have more to come in 2024.
Oh,
Kodi,
yeah.
say a couple words of our co-production of a certain age.
Of a Certain Age has been such a expounding, life-changing experience for me. Talking to these people has taught me so much. Co-hosting it with you and learning how to produce and come up and with themes and topics and getting guests. I've learned so much in this endeavor, and it's truly changed my life. It's made me into, I feel like, a better entrepreneur, as well as it's taught me so much about all the topics that we've discussed. And this last episode, we get to talk, we did with two of our best friends, and it's amazing. It's stellar. It was electric in that room that day. You guys have to go give it a listen. It's about fashion, so it's the perfect jumping on point. But listen to all of them.
And we would be remiss if we didn't mention that the theme song of a certain age is sung amazingly by our one and only Kodi Maurice Doggette. And Kodi, such a brilliant song. You were to the task. I put you to the task, and you delivered way beyond I could ever imagine.
Thank you.
And I know the song will come out in 2024, the full single, as well as an EP, we hope. But any tidbits you can talk about producing that?
Talk about learning. And that was definitely, it was a huge learning curve, and not the one on my penis. It was much it was all the way to the left, because it was quick. I had to do the turnaround. I had to do all the vocals, and I had to learn. So it was a lot. But I rediscovered who I am at my core and what I love to do and why I love to do it. I want to be the next Mariah Carey. I'm just putting it out there. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I love that. Teddy watching us, our co-host, says EP, woot woot.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's almost done being written. I have a first song that I want to release from the EP at the beginning of the year. So look out for that.
And Kodi, you're in line with a really good time with LGBTQ artists,
Yeah.
and your voice is amazing. You
Thank you.
120% delivered on our theme song, and all people have to do is listen to a tidbit. You can hear it, Of a Certain Age, OACA, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, check it out. We're on episode 9, and it's a really good time in the holiday season to get caught up, because we've got some new episodes coming your way in 2024 that we're really excited about. So check that out. So, okay, well, we've got a couple minutes before, or should we just bring our guest?
Yeah, we don't have 1 minute.
We're going to bring him on
Yeah.
to some other topics. So let's bring up our special guest right now. Do we bring him up, or how
I'm
does that
going to
work?
bring him up.
Okay.
He has to unmute his microphone.
Got it. And
So, there he is.
I'm unmuted, I think.
You did it. Yay.
welcome. We want to welcome our very special guest, Dale Corvino, who has a brand new book out right now of short stories called Bonds and Boundaries. And your brand new book is a collection of short stories written over 10 years exploring those titular themes: queer longing and digital estrangement. Among the bonds explored are two women, a starter, and a homemaker. And our favorite that we are going to be talking about is the section called Vectors, but we'll talk about all of it. Dale, welcome to Tag's podcast, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Kodi. It's great to be here. It's the book launched in October, and I did a launch event here in New York at the Bureau of General Services, which is the queer bookshop that's in the Gay and Lesbian Center. And I did a launch in Los Angeles at Stories, which was a lot of fun. And I'm going to be on the road with it mostly in March.
Tell us about the collection of short stories. How did they come to fruition? Where did you get this idea to collect all of these short stories into one collection?
You know, it was written at a time when I was really like developing my craft as a writer, and a little something about my kind of origin story as a writer, which is that when I was actively doing sex work in the early 2000s in New York, I just kind of got thrust into the situation without knowing too much about how it was supposed to be.
You didn't get a manual.
There was a lot of on-the-job learning, let's put it that way. So from the beginning, I kept a diary, and I wrote down a little paragraph about each call that I went on and where it was and what their apartment was like and what they were into and how much I made. So this diary, and I was busy. I had a good run as a by the hour hustler in New York. So the diary was really like the basis of a lot of the writing I do even today, because it was I think it was the first time I did really honest writing, like the diary format and the reason I was doing it. And it just became this incredible guidebook to what people were turned on by, what they wanted, the things they wanted that they didn't even know how to say. I had to sometimes figure it out for them or with them. So it became this kind of diary, or this kind of map of longings in the greater New York area. And I think that is the DNA of a lot of the writing that I do now.
To me, writing is such a gift, and I love writers in general. And I read Bonds and Boundaries, definitely the Vectors section. We're going to talk a little bit about more of it, but what you write is short stories. And one of the things I was struck with when writing a short story, and I'm hoping you can extrapolate on it, is you have a knack for extrapolating the story, moving it forward in a way where you tell a lot in a very short period, but that often in a long novel can take several pages. And I went with it. And what's the process of writing a short story to advance it so that it's believable, because all of yours was believable, and not feeling like you have to write a whole novel?
Yeah, I think that I thank you for that. And this is also getting back to Kodi's original question, which I didn't exactly answer, but
Okay.
I think I was drawn to writing short stories because I was learning my craft and as a writer, and I didn't think I was going to be able to take on a full-length book, like a novel. The ideas that I had about stories resolve themselves within 20 pages, 30 pages, or what have you. And I think the shortest story in the book is maybe even 5 pages. There's a flash piece called The Marielito, which is about cruising in Central Park. So I give the stories and the themes that I wanted to take on enough room. I didn't really set but that was what I was capable of at the time of writing them. And I did write them over 10 years, and I did eventually come to see them as kind of in groups, which is the 3 sections of this book. I think we all have our obsessions, so I go back to the same themes a lot.
And speaking of themes, the stories, they have a genteel feel to them. I feel like your wording and your phrasing it's so beautiful. It just seems really like from a bygone era almost. But I feel, what era were most of the stories in, and do you have a connection to that specific era, or am I just making things up in my head? Is what I want to know.
No, I kind of get what you're saying. Like I did, and I think that's part of like my searching for craft, because I was like comparing myself to like, writers who might have written 100 years ago, or I was trying a little bit for that timelessness, but also like wanting some of the current topics to break through that. So there's a story about like an aging salesman who hooks up with guys in Milwaukee on Grindr. So like I wanted that kind of that buzz between like what you're talking about, like beautiful sentences and lovely phrases, and like
Gorgeous,
but also like we're getting down, like we're getting into contemporary themes.
It's a fine line, definitely, but you do it really well. And going to the whole section of vectors, and we'll talk a little bit more about specific storylines that you talk about, but you mentioned earlier that your work in sex work. How comfortable were you? What can you tell us about your time in sex work, and what did you think about when you were writing it, that how it was going to be perceived? Or was it already common knowledge amongst your friends and family that Dale did sex work, and or were you worried that people were going to read this, or was it like, oh no, Dale, we know Dale does this?
I mean, it's been long enough now that I can my mom's reading this. She's a little gagged.
Love it.
But I was not out as a worker during I was like it was pretty DL. Like some people knew enough, the people who needed to know knew. And my cover story was I'm working at freelance event gigs, which was not much of a lie.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, the way I got into it, I was like, I had this breakup that was kind of dramatic, and I was like, I'm going to get revenge on my ex by like getting really buff. And I wound up, I was living in the East Village at the time, so I wound up like working out at Tompkins Square Park, like with all the chulos in the little outdoor workout section. And then I got on AOL. It was like, it was the 90s, but it was like AOL chat rooms were still very hot.
Of course.
And I found all these chat rooms, and I was like seeking validation out, showing like my newly buff body. And this one guy just offered me money to come uptown. And I was like, I'm not going. He lives on the Upper West Side. I'm not going uptown. And he was so persistent. I was like, okay, fine. And I was broke. So that's how it all started. And then I was like, I can like generate this income out of pixels from the safety of this studio apartment in the East Village, just with like a pirated Wi-Fi signal from the neighbors upstairs who didn't know to password protect her signel, just chatting and
That's in one of your stories too.
And it was fantastic. I mean, it's definitely a different era of the internet, because it was just definitely like less scrutinized and freer and more wild. And those chat rooms were popping. I mean, like the internet usage started to shift and people started to move away from AOL chat rooms. But the guys that were hiring me were not the fastest to move. They were generally old, and they were still up in the chat rooms. So it worked for me for a few years.
My internet chat room screen name was Kissing a Fool, which is an old George Michael song. So
such a good one, Kodi.
Thank you. I still remember it. So it might be a password or two, but no, it might. You know what? I think it's what email address that I still have. That's what it was.
Yeah, I remember mine.
What is it? What was it?
Really marketing. It was pure marketing. It was bi for bisexual, mask, masculine, Ital for Italian, and packin'. So like it gave you all all the information you needed to hire me.
All the facts, honey, and
And
nothing but
mine
the
was, if
facts.
we're doing round robin,
Wait, what was
mine, if we're doing round robin, was Latin hung jock. Latin hung
Oh,
jock.
I think we got it.
I'm
Wait a
sure we
minute.
did, of course. We
Am
had
I the
to.
only one that didn't have his penis size in his chat name?
I know, so dumb, but we did that.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I just meant that I was like, packing up my things to move into another
Oh,
apartment.
that's what it was. There we go. I'm going to the dirty place. That's on me.
No,
I apologize.
Oh no, it was hung. No, no.
Oh.
Let's not get it twisted. One of my favorite stories in the Vectors section of the book is called Jesus Year. And it represents two characters, Chris and Marta, as well as another character as well. Who's the other character that makes it the escort?
There's the young college kid hustler.
Yes.
Who's like a Pennsylvania college kid escort. And there's Chris Tolliver, who's this drunk, dissolute, disaffected New Yorker who has a really train wreck of a weekend in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And Marta is the housekeeper.
Marta is the housekeeper who walks into seeing, is it Chris being with the jock in his mouth, tied up?
Tied to the wall sconces with the belts from the hotel bathrobes, and he's got his underwear stuffed in his mouth.
And if I could just read a little page from page 70, the room Marta let him use for confrontation was a suite sought after for its view of the Bethlehem Star, an illuminated display set on tall scaffolding in nearby woods. Chris hid in the bedroom closet. He didn't want Lance to catch sight of him. There was a mirror over the desk, and he had worked out the sight lines. Marta stalled Lance, giving him the impression that she'd been called in to freshen up the living room. So it's a scheme that they're planning, just to give you all a background. Listening through the louved closet door reminded Chris of his first confession. He'd crossed himself like he'd taught him in catechism as he entered the confessional and said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," line, and waited expectantly. When the priest whispered, "Well, son, tell me your sins," young Chris was appalled. Maybe he hadn't been paying attention, but he expected that the priest would already know his sins. He must be able to divine them through the stampede metal screen, he reasoned. What was the magic in telling? Why did they even bother with this ornate booth? He couldn't even think of any good sins, so if the priest couldn't tell him what was wrong, what good was he? And I love that because I and Kodi are, what did we say, Kodi? We are Reformed or former Catholics, but
we are something Catholic.
You know what the church calls us?
Where? What?
Church calls us fallen away.
Okay, so we're fallen away.
Yes.
And just that point, I just had points of going into the confessional because you did such a good job of illuminating. I remember going into that, and I used to love going there because it was like going into the bathroom stall today of the Eagle, but it just had that, and I knew I would be here somewhere someday later. But you did such a good descriptive job. Did any of it come from your own Catholicism background?
I mean, everything in that story is mostly made up, except what you highlighted, which is
wow,
the confession booth. Like that really did happen. I was a 13-year-old kid. I was, I guess I wasn't paying attention to the nun when she talked to us about how first confession worked. And I really thought there was magic in it. And when there wasn't magic in it, I was like, why is there this box? Like, why do I have to tell you? Like, you should know. And I literally walked out of the church and walked home and never went back to Catholic school or Catholicism again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
It was like invented in that story, like, but it's based on some real experience. But that in particular is the kernel of truth in that story.
Nice.
So wonderful. Well, I have to admit that I skipped around a little bit, but when I saw the name Raunchy Daddy, I did a full complete stop. I had
Oh,
to
Kodi,
read
how
it.
much did we love that?
Raunchy Daddy is where it's at. It
Yeah.
drew me in. It was like a retelling of my own life and experiences, especially Steve. Get in there.
Listening audience, I'm smelling my armpits right now.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's so sexy. And I couldn't stop reading it because I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go get a snippet of something else." No, I'm all about me and Raunchy Daddy. I think I don't even know if there's a question there, but I think maybe were you peeping in my window when you wrote this story maybe?
I did have a real life Raunch Daddy client, and he was a lovely man. He was not that man that's in the story. Like, a lot of that is like his backstory is fully fabricated about him being a Mexican novelist.
Mhm.
And that character that's in the story is not me exactly, because by the time I was taking the Raunch Daddy clients, where you literally, like, at least for me, it was like, you literally have to work up a sweat and like get real ripe for like at least a day and make it smell like 3 days in order to satisfy this client. But what I was gonna and so the character is a lot more like, he's like a naive version of myself. He's a much more like a younger and much more naive version of myself than when it actually happened. And I love that that story becomes kind of a love story. And
Yeah.
I was doing it in a way to like, a lot of like US fiction, you hear about Mexican characters and they're like, the immigrant, the worker, the laborer, the person who's looked down upon by other Americans. But I wanted to reverse that polarity a little bit and make the Mexican character like the one who's like paying the American kid for his labor.
Mhm.
So it's like it's an inversion.
Thank you for that, Dale, as a Mexican creator, content creator. I appreciated that.
Well, go ahead. What were you going to say, Dale? I'm sorry.
Sometimes, like, to reverse those polarities, it's like it upends people's expectations of the Mexican character or the American, so that we can look at each other in different ways, and we can see each other more fully.
I love that. And that just brings me to the question. I thought of the question by going the long way around. You have such a diverse range of characters in this book and all the collection of the stories. Why is that so important to you as an artist and a creator?
I mean, first of all, I'm a New Yorker, and I'm a New Yorker of a certain generation. I'm like Gen X, and so that's my experience, right? Like, the character that's in the Flash story, the Marielito, is based on a character I met in the Ramble, who was from the Mariel boat lift in Cuba, which is, that flotilla of undesirables that was sent off the island under Castro. And the story that comes after Raunch Daddy is called Three-Way Calls.
Yes.
And it reflects my personal, I mean, it is based in fact, because like I would get occasional calls for some stuff that was hard for me to do, that made me uncomfortable. And one of those things was race play. Like, and even recently I had a hookup with this adorable guy, and it started getting a little kinkier, and he started asking for some kind of like verbal race play. And I was just like, afterwards we kind of processed together, and I was like, I was a little uncomfortable with that. And he was like, I was a little uncomfortable with that too, but it turns me on. So I use that kind of like that feeling of the feelings I experienced being asked as a provider to provide race play scenarios, to look at race and to give that character a voice. And if you notice, he has the last word in the story. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of Latino characters, there are a number of Black characters, Middle Eastern characters. I look into my own Italian American condition in the first couple of stories, which I think is interesting because at least for my generation of Italian Americans, we were not white. We did not identify as white. We were not identified as white. We had a separate racial category. Like my ancestors, when they came to this country, they were considered Southern Europeans, and they were subject to employment restriction. And my grandfather was pretty swarthy. That was the term they used. He was pretty dark skinned. So we never like were, it's been a period of acceptance over many years that whiteness kind of absorbed the Italian American subculture. But my experience growing up was not that. So I have this kind of like, I think I have this little bit of an insider outsider or outside in view of race in America. And I was trying to deploy that in some of the stories as well.
It's really interesting. I was super uncomfortable reading with the three-way call. I was like, oh my goodness. Wow. So
But
yeah,
we'll let people
I get
read
it.
it too, because
Yeah.
it was enlightening in the end, the way you wrote it, and we'll just
Yeah.
let people make their own decisions on
Yeah,
it. And
definitely.
one of the stories that I read also on race relations was the 49th and Other Boundaries. And it has to do with immigration and a couple, a white guy and a person from a Latin American country. And I can't help but think with what we're going through in this country right now with immigration, on how resonant that could actually be, particularly within our LGBTQ community. And just talk a little bit about that particular story, if you could.
Sure. So the 49th and Other Boundaries, that is directly based on my personal experience. And I could not tell that story for years because I was like, I don't want ICE on me or anyone else that's involved. So like I told that story as fiction as a cover. And
Wow.
I think that's part of the role of fiction. Like, you know, as a sex worker, I was very busy elaborating a fictional version of myself, you know, like I sold myself as the Guido stud for hire, so to speak, right? So I needed to tell that story because I thought it was important, like all the themes that you talk about, like these migratory crises that we're in, right? The character in that story is from Venezuela, and Venezuela has faced this very dramatic diaspora. Like millions of Venezuelans have fled their country and gone to Spain or other countries in South America or to Miami. And it's part of the themes that are raised in this. Like, right now I'm talking to you a few miles from where I was born, but I feel a sense of estrangement in our age, whether it's like digital estrangement or just like the weirdness of COVID or what have you. And I feel like the estrangement of people who are displaced from their homes through one way or another, whether it's like, you know, a lot of gay kids in South America fled because their parents were intolerant of them. A lot of Cubans fled. A lot of the Cubans that fled during that period were in fact gay also. So I think there's a connection between like our queerness and the estrangement of like this whole class of people who are like displaced from their homes.
Wow. Very cool. Absolutely.
I went a little deep on that one.
No, I know.
So many themes in this book that we have to reflect upon and just take a look. It helps. It's really like a mirror of society and how that it affects our lives. So it's beautiful. Kudos to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for reading.
Absolutely. Well, we want to tell everyone the book is out now. It is called Bonds and Boundaries by Dale Corvino. Where can people get the book? Yes, and I love the cover. Really cool cover.
Have you guys been watching a little show on TV called Fellow Travelers?
Yes.
I'm on episode 4.
Okay, so
I think me too.
This is like a little small world thing. Dan Minahan, who's one of the producers of the show, is an old friend of mine. He took these pictures of me in 2004 at the Bonaventure Hotel in Los Angeles. And he and I were just spitballing about ideas for the cover art. And he was like, "Oh, I have some pictures of you might want to use." And I wound up using them.
Wow.
Very erotic
That's
and
amazing.
luring, and
Yeah, they're kind of like,
yes.
yeah, they're kind of like very suggestive. Go figure.
You know, one of the great things about the book that I think is going to be very enticing to people and readers is that you can pick it up and read one chapter of a short story and get something out of it, and it will resonate with you. And it's not like you have to read the whole book. You can pick it up here and there, and it's going to be one of those great books that is going to tell some really impactful stories that will make you think. How can people get the book? How do you want people to follow you?
Okay, so the book, if you're in New York, the book is available. I think there's still copies at the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is in the Gay and Lesbian Center. It's available online at the publisher, Rebel Satori, which is a small press based out of New Orleans. It's available at the Barnes & Noble online. It's available at Shop Queer, which is a new platform from Eric Cervini. It's available at the Big A platform if you so choose. They're not my favorites, but yeah, you can buy it there too. So it's available widely.
Got it. And give us those listings too, because we'll put those on this particular show notes, and then that way people can get it, because I just think it's one of those books you want to kind of have in your repertoire. So absolutely.
Well,
Congratulations. And I know you have an announcement that you want to tell us today.
I do. And, this timing worked out like amazing, because I submitted a memoir, which is a lot of the story of my life, both as a kept boy in my 20s and as a by the hour hustler in my 30s, to another small press, and they chose it as their nonfiction prize for 2023, and are publishing it next year. And it's called Kept Boy in the Afterlife.
Hey.
A lot of the themes that come up in my fiction come up in my memoir. So, but it's all real.
Wow. Are you equally excited and nervous, because we're going to learn so much about your story?
I'm so psyched. I gotta have another talk with my mom though. Like, don't worry, it's just short stories. It's all fiction. The memoir, she's gonna have some explaining to do.
Wow. Yes,
wait till December 26th is my advice on that. Like,
wait till 2024.
Sing Silent Night.
Be out until next year. I have a few months to line that up.
Yeah.
Congratulations, and we'll have you back for the new book. And I understand that you will stick around for a hot topic with us.
I love a hot topic.
Okay. Well, everybody's doing their year in review, including us, and we couldn't. Sniffies, I'm not sure if you're a big Sniffies fan or not, Dale.
All about Sniffies. It's where I've played lately.
Well, one of the things that they said were these cities were just exposed as the horniest cities in America. And I can read you a few things. They did a whole year in review. And let me just get this put up real quickly. I thought I had it. Kodi, do you have it?
I have it. I'm dropping it in.
Okay. There you go. We'll just do this here. So Sniffies did a whole year in review. One of the things that they did was that I just want to make sure that I'm on the right story here as we move.